Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a simple question. Why do intelligent people still make the same mistakes again and again? It's not because they lack intelligence. It's because awareness is missing. Knowledge without awareness is like having eyes but choosing not to see. Today, I want to share 6 habits that silently block our growth. Habits that many of us carry without realizing. And once we drop them, life begins to change. Many people spend years feeling stuck, frustrated, or disappointed with their lives, not because they lack ability, but because they unknowingly give away their power. This happens the moment responsibility is replaced with blame. When something does not work out, it feels easier to point fingers at circumstances, people, luck, or timing. Blame offers temporary emotional comfort, but it silently steals growth. The truth is uncomfortable yet liberating. The moment you take responsibility, you regain control over your life. Responsibility does not mean self-criticism or carrying unnecessary guilt. It means recognizing that while you may not control every situation, you always control your response. Life does not wait for perfect conditions, and progress does not require perfect people around you. Growth begins when you stop asking why this happened to you and start asking what this situation is teaching you. That shift in thinking transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning. Blame keeps the mind focused on the past, but responsibility pulls attention toward the future. A person who constantly blames remains trapped in the same patterns because nothing changes externally until something changes internally. When you accept responsibility, you move from being a victim of circumstances to being a participant in your own journey. This mindset creates clarity, confidence, and direction, even during uncertainty. Taking responsibility also builds emotional maturity. It teaches you to pause before reacting, to observe before judging, and to respond rather than retaliate. In professional and personal environments, this quality earns trust and respect. People who own their actions, admit mistakes, and correct them grow faster than those who defend their ego. Accountability does not weaken your image, it strengthens your credibility. Many people fear responsibility because they associate it with pressure or failure. In reality, responsibility is freedom. When you accept that your choices matter, you realize that change is possible. Even small, consistent actions taken with awareness can shift outcomes over time. Responsibility turns waiting into action and hope into strategy. Blame often disguises itself as logic. It convinces the mind that improvement is impossible unless others change first. This belief delays progress and drains motivation. Responsibility, on the other hand, focuses on what can be done now with what is available. It encourages self-discipline, problem-solving, and resilience. Instead of feeling powerless, you begin to feel capable. Personal growth accelerates when responsibility becomes a habit rather than a reaction. This habit strengthens decision-making and reduces emotional dependence on external validation. You stop expecting life to be fair and start preparing yourself to be strong. Challenges no longer feel personal, they become practical. Every setback becomes feedback. In leadership, responsibility separates influence from authority. A responsible person does not wait for instructions to improve a situation. They act with intention, communicate clearly, and take ownership of outcomes. This mindset naturally inspires others, not through control, but through example. People follow those who lead themselves first. Ultimately, responsibility aligns actions with values. It creates consistency between what you say and what you do. Over time, this alignment builds inner confidence and long-term success. When blame leaves the mindset, clarity enters. When clarity enters, growth follows. Responsibility is not a burden placed on you by life. It is a choice that empowers you to shape it. Many people unknowingly place their happiness in the hands of others by constantly seeking approval. This habit often begins subtly, through the desire to be liked, accepted, or praised. While appreciation feels good, dependence on it slowly erodes self-confidence. When your sense of worth rises and falls with other people's opinions, emotional stability becomes fragile. Life then turns into a performance rather than an experience. Approval seeking creates an invisible pressure to meet expectations that are not always spoken, but deeply felt. Decisions begin to revolve around what will be accepted rather than what is meaningful or right. Over time, this disconnect weakens authenticity. You may find yourself agreeing when you disagree, staying silent when you should speak, or choosing paths that impress others but leave you unfulfilled. The problem with living for approval is that opinions are unpredictable and constantly changing. The same people who praise you today may question you tomorrow. When validation becomes the source of confidence, criticism feels like a personal attack rather than neutral feedback. This emotional dependency makes growth difficult because fear of judgment replaces curiosity and courage. True confidence is internal, not borrowed. It develops when self-respect becomes more important than applause. This does not mean ignoring feedback or becoming indifferent to others. It means filtering opinions wisely instead of absorbing them blindly. Constructive feedback can guide improvement, but approval should never define identity. In professional environments, approval seeking often leads to burnout. People overextend themselves, avoid setting boundaries, and say yes when they should say no. The desire to be seen as reliable or likable can slowly turn into exhaustion and resentment. Productivity suffers not because of workload, but because energy is spent maintaining an image rather than delivering value. Letting go of approval seeking requires clarity about personal values. When values are clear, decisions become easier. You stop asking whether people will agree and start asking whether your actions align with your principles. This shift builds quiet confidence and emotional independence. You begin to act from purpose rather than pressure. Approval seeking also limits creativity. Fear of judgment discourages experimentation and originality. People choose safe options to avoid criticism, even when innovation is needed. When the mind is free from constant evaluation, creativity expands. Ideas flow more naturally when expression is honest rather than filtered. Relationships improve when approval is no longer the goal. Authentic connections are built on mutual respect, not constant validation. When you stop trying to please everyone, you attract people who appreciate you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. This creates deeper trust and emotional balance. Developing self-approval takes time and reflection. It involves recognizing strengths without arrogance and acknowledging weaknesses without shame. Progress becomes personal rather than performative. Success feels more satisfying because it is measured internally rather than externally. When approval stops controlling decisions, confidence stabilizes, emotional reactions become calmer, choices become clearer, and self-worth becomes consistent. You no longer wait for permission to believe in yourself. Self-respect becomes the foundation, and from that foundation, genuine confidence grows naturally. Many people limit their own growth not because they lack intelligence, but because ego quietly blocks their ability to learn. Ego creates the illusion of completeness, convincing the mind that there is nothing new to understand and nothing more to improve. It whispers, "I already know this." And in doing so, it closes the door to progress. Learning, however, begins where certainty ends. The moment a person believes they know enough, development slows and eventually stops. Ego is often misunderstood as confidence, but the two are very different. Confidence is rooted in self-awareness, while ego is rooted in self-protection. Ego fears being wrong because it associates mistakes with weakness. As a result, it avoids questions, resists feedback, and dismisses perspectives that challenge existing beliefs. This resistance may preserve pride in the short term, but it costs growth in the long term. A learning mindset requires humility, not self-doubt. Humility is the ability to recognize that no matter how much experience or success one has achieved, there is always more to learn. The most accomplished individuals remain students of life. They listen carefully, observe deeply, and remain open to correction. This openness allows them to adapt, refine their skills, and stay relevant in changing environments. In professional settings, ego can quietly damage performance. When individuals refuse to accept feedback, mistakes repeat themselves. Teams suffer when people defend their opinions instead of exploring better solutions. Learning-oriented individuals, on the other hand, view feedback as information rather than judgment. They understand that improvement is a process, not a threat to identity. Ego also distorts communication. It prioritizes being right over being effective. Conversations become competitions instead of collaborations. Learning requires a different approach, one where understanding matters more than winning an argument. When ego steps aside, listening improves, empathy deepens, and communication becomes more productive. Choosing learning over ego strengthens emotional intelligence. It teaches patience, self-regulation, and perspective. Instead of reacting defensively, a learning-focused mind pauses to reflect. This pause creates space for growth. Mistakes become lessons rather than sources of shame. Failure becomes feedback rather than final judgment. Growth accelerates when curiosity replaces pride. Curious minds ask better questions and explore unfamiliar ideas without fear. They are not threatened by others' knowledge or success. Instead, they see it as an opportunity to expand their own understanding. This mindset builds resilience because it treats challenges as opportunities for development rather than threats to self-worth. In leadership, learning is a defining quality. Effective leaders do not rely solely on authority or past success. They evolve with changing realities. They seek input, encourage dialogue, and admit when they do not have all the answers. This behavior builds trust and inspires others to grow as well. A leader who learns creates a culture of growth. Personal development follows the same principle. Life constantly presents lessons through experiences, relationships, and setbacks. Ego resists these lessons by blaming others or denying responsibility. Learning accepts them with awareness. It asks, what can be improved, adjusted, or understood more deeply? This approach turns life into a continuous classroom. When learning becomes a priority, growth becomes inevitable. Skills sharpen, perspectives broaden, and confidence becomes grounded rather than fragile. The mind stays flexible, adaptable, and open. Ego demands protection. Learning demands openness. Choosing learning is not about lowering self-worth, but about expanding potential. Complaining often feels like a natural response to difficulty. It gives the mind a sense of release, a temporary feeling that the burden has been shared. Yet while complaining may soothe emotions for a moment, it rarely improves the situation. In many CA, it quietly reinforces a sense of helplessness. The more a person complains, the more the mind becomes trained to focus on problems rather than possibilities. Complaints usually arise from unmet expectations. When reality does not align with what was hoped for, frustration appears. The issue is not the emotion itself, but what follows it. When frustration turns into repeated complaint without action, energy is wasted. Time that could be invested in solutions is spent reinforcing dissatisfaction. Over time, this habit shapes attitude, communication, and even identity. A problem-focused mindset narrows perspective. Complaining magnifies obstacles and minimizes options. It convinces the individual that circumstances are fixed and that improvement depends on external change. This belief removes personal agency and reduces motivation. Action, on the other hand, restores control. Even small steps create momentum and shift attention from what is wrong to what can be done. In professional environments, excessive complaining weakens credibility. It signals resistance rather than responsibility. While constructive discussion of challenges is necessary, repeated complaint without initiative creates stagnation. Individuals who consistently pair observations with solutions stand out. They are seen as contributors rather than critics, and their influence naturally increases. Complaining also affects emotional well-being. It keeps the mind anchored in negativity, making it harder to recognize progress or appreciate effort. This constant focus on problems increases stress and reduces resilience. Action-oriented thinking changes emotional patterns. When effort is directed toward improvement, even slow progress feels empowering. The mind experiences purpose instead of frustration. Replacing complaint with action does not mean ignoring difficulties or suppressing emotion. It means processing challenges with awareness and responding intentionally. A calm assessment of the situation followed by a clear step forward creates clarity. Action does not need to be perfect or immediate. It only needs to be honest and consistent. Action builds self-trust. Each step taken reinforces the belief that improvement is possible. This belief strengthens discipline and reduces dependency on external conditions. Instead of waiting for circumstances to improve, action trains the mind to adapt. Flexibility replaces rigidity, and confidence grows through experience. In relationships, constant complaining can create emotional distance. It places focus on what is lacking rather than what can be strengthened. Action-oriented communication shifts the dynamic. Expressing needs clearly and working towards solutions fosters understanding and cooperation. This approach builds healthier connections and mutual respect. Action also refines clarity. When you act, feedback becomes visible. You learn what works and what does not. Complaining offers no feedback loop because nothing changes. Action transforms uncertainty into information. This process improves decision-making and builds competence over time. A habit of action develops resilience. Setbacks are viewed as part of progress rather than proof of failure. The individual remains engaged even when results are delayed. This persistence separates those who evolve from those who remain stuck. Growth does not come from perfect conditions but from consistent effort. When action replaces complaint, energy shifts from resistance to responsibility. The mind becomes solution-oriented, emotions stabilize, and progress becomes measurable. Improvement becomes a process rather than a wish. Action does not remove challenges, but it ensures that challenges do not remove momentum. Comparison is a habit that quietly erodes confidence and distorts self-perception. It often begins with observation, but quickly turns into judgment. When people measure their progress against others, they forget that every journey is shaped by different circumstances, timing, and resources. This habit shifts focus away from personal growth and places attention on external benchmarks that rarely reflect the full picture. Comparing progress creates unnecessary pressure. It encourages unrealistic expectations and undermines patience. When someone else's success appears faster or more visible, it can lead to self-doubt, even when steady progress is being made. This mental pattern ignores individual pace and replaces it with an artificial race that has no finish line. The problem with comparison is not awareness of others, but dependency on them for self-evaluation. When self-worth becomes tied to someone else's achievements, confidence becomes unstable. Motivation shifts from improvement to competition. Instead of asking how to grow, the mind asks how to catch up. This mindset drains energy and reduces satisfaction. Comparison also disrupts focus. Attention is divided between personal responsibilities and external distractions. Time spent monitoring others is time taken away from refining skills and strengthening discipline. Growth requires concentration, and comparison scatters it. Progress slows not because ability is lacking, but because attention is misdirected. In professional settings, comparison can weaken collaboration. Instead of learning from colleagues, individuals may feel threatened by their success. This creates distance where cooperation is needed. A growth-focused mindset sees others as sources of insight rather than competition. Learning accelerates when curiosity replaces insecurity. Every individual's path includes unseen challenges. External success rarely reveals internal struggle. Comparing you beginning to someone else's midpoint creates a distorted narrative. It leads to harsh self-judgment and unnecessary discouragement. Progress is not linear, and comparison ignores this reality. Focusing on one's own journey restores clarity. Goals become personal rather than reactive. Success is defined by improvement, not position. This shift builds sustainable motivation. When progress is measured against previous performance, confidence grows steadily and honestly. Comparison often distracts from gratitude. It highlights what is missing instead of what is present. This mindset reduces fulfillment and increases dissatisfaction. Gratitude, paired with effort, strengthens resilience. It allows appreciation of current achievements while working toward future goals. Running your own race does not mean ignoring others completely. Observation can inspire, but only when filtered through self-awareness. Inspiration motivates improvement without diminishing self-worth. The difference lies in intention. Comparison judges, inspiration guides. Personal growth thrives in environments of self-acceptance. When individuals honor their own pace, they develop patience and persistence. Mistakes become lessons rather than evidence of inadequacy. This emotional stability supports long-term development. Letting go of comparison frees mental space. Energy once spent on self-doubt is redirected towards skill building and creativity. Progress becomes meaningful because it aligns with individual values rather than external validation. Confidence stabilizes. Effort becomes consistent, and growth feels natural rather than forced. Change is one of the few constants in life, yet it is often met with resistance. Many people associate change with loss, uncertainty, or instability, and as a result, they cling to familiarity even when it no longer serves them. This resistance is not a sign of strength. It is often a response rooted in fear. The mind prefers what is predictable, even if it limits growth. However, progress demands adaptation, and those who resist change risk remaining stagnant while the world moves forward. Fear of change often arises from the desire for control. When routines are disrupted, the illusion of certainty disappears. This can create discomfort, but discomfort is not inherently negative. It signals the presence of growth. Development rarely occurs within comfort zones. Instead, it unfolds when individuals are willing to face uncertainty with curiosity rather than avoidance. Change does not erase identity, it refines it. Many people fear that adapting will mean losing themselves, their values, or their sense of stability. In reality, adaptation strengthens identity by testing and clarifying what truly matters. Values remain intact when they are consciously chosen, even as behaviors evolve. Flexibility allows individuals to remain aligned with their principles while adjusting to new circumstances. In professional life, resistance to change can limit relevance. Industries evolve, skills become outdated, and expectations shift. Those who adapt remain effective. Those who resist struggle. Learning new methods, embracing innovation, and adjusting strategies are not signs of inadequacy but of intelligence. Adaptability is a skill that enhances long-term success and resilience. Emotionally, embracing change builds confidence. Each adaptation reinforces the belief that challenges can be managed. This reduces anxiety over future uncertainty. Instead of fearing what might happen, the mind becomes prepared to respond. Confidence grows not from certainty, but from trust in one's ability to navigate the unknown. Change also strengthens problem-solving ability. New situations require new approaches. This encourages creativity and critical thinking. When resistance is replaced with openness, solutions become visible. The mind shifts from defending the past to designing the future. In relationships, adaptability improves understanding. People grow, priorities shift, and dynamics evolve. Clinging to outdated expectations creates conflict. Flexibility allows space for communication, compromise, and mutual growth. It fosters emotional intelligence and deeper connection. Adapting does not mean accepting every change without evaluation. Discernment remains essential. Healthy adaptation involves thoughtful adjustment, not passive compliance. It requires awareness of what to keep, what to modify, and what to release. This balanced approach maintains stability while allowing progress. Resisting change consumes energy. It demands constant effort to preserve what is familiar, even when it is no longer effective. Embracing change redirects that energy toward development. The result is increased motivation and engagement. When change is approached with openness, it becomes a teacher rather than a threat. Each transition offers insight, skill, and perspective. Growth accelerates when adaptability becomes a habit rather than a reaction. Flexibility transforms uncertainty into opportunity and allows individuals to evolve with confidence and purpose. So, remember, awareness is not about judging ourselves. It's about awakening ourselves. When these habits leave, clarity enters. When clarity enters, peace follows. And when peace follows, success naturally comes. So today, don't try to be perfect, just try to be aware. Because awareness is the first step toward a meaningful life. Thank you.